Howdy, everyone. All right, so I know no one's gonna see the original take, but I have actually already recorded this video, and I'm doing it again. So I did this last night, right before the start of FP1, and I took a look over everything, and some of my lists I literally just could not reasonably agree with. For reference, I didn't take the practice sessions into account, such as Daniel Ricciardo being P1 in FP1. And the first video, I actually had him higher. I had to drop him down a little bit. So these practice results have absolutely zero effect on this video that I'm redoing. Anyways, I kind of wanted to get into it, as I always do. Oop, I'm on the wrong screen once again. So I'm going to rank all 20 drivers, going to do the team standings at the end, and I can already feel myself running out of breath because I am out of shape, and it's late at night, and I'm tired. Anyways, let's get into it. We're going to start at the bottom, work ourselves up one by one. I don't think this order will be too shocking for anyone. Nothing too controversial in my opinion, but let's get into it. P20, I've put Kevin Magnussen. I think last year kind of proved that maybe he should have never been brought back. Granted, it did work out really well for them when he did have Schumacher as a teammate, but last year was kind of proof, in my opinion, that I don't want to use washed, because that is so degrading of a term, but I just don't think he's the quality for F1 anymore. I think it's time for Haas to move on, and I think the stones are already being put in place, if they haven't already technically been signed, for Ollie Behrman to replace Kevin Magnussen for 2025. P19, I've put Logan Sargent. I think a second year will definitely hold a little bit of improvement. I would almost want to put him higher, but I don't think Williams is going to take the step up that they are quite hoping for, and I don't see it really working out for Logan Sargent. I have a tough time seeing him continue in the sport, especially if he continues to be as crash happy as he was the second half of last season. I think there is room for improvement. I do think he is a fantastic young driver. Maybe F1 just isn't the place for him. If it doesn't work out, he guaranteed probably has a spot with IndyCar next year. P18, I put Nico Hulkenberg. I think Haas are just absolutely awful this year. I won't be surprised if they're P19 and P20. He's another driver, as much as I think there's been reports, I don't know if he reported it himself though, that he has a clause to return for next year. But I still think of what I did for my silly season predictions. I think if they have a chance to go for Sergio Perez, that would make a lot more sense. I don't think Perez is going to demand a ton of money. I think he'll bring enough backing to really kind of counteract what it would. And I think his experience in Red Bull will be very intriguing for Haas and make a lot of sense within the team, considering their American roots, as much as they're definitely not an American team. But that is what it is. Yeah, Haas are going to be definitely far and away at the bottom, so P18 for Nico. P17, I put Alex Albon. This is a driver who I think could go up. In both my original video I made as well as this one, it left him at P17. There was no changing that. But I won't be shocked if he proves me wrong, simply because he is fantastic. I just don't think Williams is fantastic. That's the only thing holding him back, in my opinion. And then in P16, I've got Zhou Guanyu. I think Sauber, Kick, whatever the heck the name of their team is called, is going to be a little bit better this year. I think last year was absolutely insanely awful. I think they take a step up. I don't think Zhou quite has the edge over his teammate, as much as I don't think he's far off. Just whenever Bottas has that edge to him, he's amazing. He had a little bit of bad luck and reliability, but we'll get a bit into that when we're talking about him. In P15, I've put Yuki Tsunoda. I think RB obviously take a little bit of a step up with their parts that they're taking now from Red Bull of last year, but I don't know if it's enough to really kind of get them competitive on a regular basis. I can see this kind of going almost in the sense of like how 2020 was for AlphaTauri, if I'm remembering correctly, where it's like, yeah, they'll probably be at least in the competition for points fairly regularly, but not enough that they're like battling for like P5, P6 on a regular basis. In P14, I put Lance Stroll. I think Aston Martin like have a decently competitive car, but Lance Stroll is extremely inconsistent. He's either going to be in the top 6 or he's not making it out of Q1. That has never really seemed to have changed, no matter how many years has had in the sport. So I'm at the point with Lance Stroll where I don't see it changing. He's not really gaining experience year to year at this point. He's just there. And I kind of expect his trend to continue. So P14 makes sense for me with Lance Stroll. P13, I put Pierre Gasly. This is a team, at the least, where I won't be surprised if they drop. At least they have looked awful through the test sessions so far. But yeah, Pierre Gasly, I think a second year in his team. I won't be surprised if I'm wrong about him. Like right now, I do put Ocon beating him. I think Ocon was the better driver as much as Gasly outscored Ocon last year. I do think Ocon performed better. But I could be wrong. Gasly's now is a second year in the team. He's a little bit more established, knows a little bit more of their inner workings. I won't be surprised if he proves me wrong and beats Ocon, but for now, I had to put Gasly P13. P12, I put Valtteri Bottas. Now, what I was trying to explain when I was more or less going over Zhou, Bottas, when he's on it, he is fantastic. He needs to improve his consistency a little bit, but I think with Sauber at least slightly improving their car, I think he'll go up the standings at least a little bit this season. It's pretty much you can only really go up. The last year was absolutely awful for him. I wouldn't have been shocked if he had lost his seat after last year, but I don't think they were gonna give up his seat to Pourchaire, and I think they still wanted the backing for at least this season of Zhou, so I can kind of understand why both of them kept their seats. But I think one of them will be gone by the end of this year, 100% for sure, if not both of them. In P11, I put Daniel Ricciardo. So originally when I made this video yesterday, I actually had Ricciardo and Bottas both higher, but I couldn't justify it, so I had to reformat my algorithm, change things up a little bit, lower them down. I think P11 is a good spot for Ricciardo. I think the RB team is going to be a lot more competitive. It's a car that suits him seemingly well. I think P11 is a good spot for him. He'll be regularly competing for points. I think he can lead that team and push for that Red Bull seat in 2025. In P10, I put Esteban Ocon. I said this in the first video I recorded, and I'll say it in this one too. They used the worst photo for him possible. Holy crap. It's like, how do you say squint your eyes and then barely smile and look really creepy? As much as I probably look like that right now because I'm super tired. But this video isn't about me. Well, it's not even really about their looks. I should shut up about that. I don't care. But yeah, I think Alpine, they're not going to be competing for the top 5 spot. Similar to last year, if anything, they might go down even further than what I'm predicting here. But yeah, they just don't look good. And I think Esteban's a good driver. I think he'll push for that Mercedes seat potentially. But I don't think Alpine has it this year, so I don't see them competing any much higher than that. P9, I put Oscar Piastri. In the original video, part of the reason why I had to reformat it is because I had Oscar Piastri lower than this, and that did not make sense to me. I think McLaren are a much better team than they were last year. I think Piastri has a lot of upside. Granted, I don't think he's still anywhere close to Lando Norris's level. Before those Silverstone upgrades, I was the biggest person saying that Piastri was actually awful, and now it's bugging me the fact that I can see I kind of put the decimal point here instead of here, so we're gonna just go ahead and ignore that. But yeah, I was probably one of Piastri's biggest critics last year. Granted, I do think he has an absolute insane amount of potential. He could be a future world champion, in my opinion, but I don't think last year was the year for him. And I think he will continue to improve, as McLaren is also seemingly improving a little bit. I don't expect them to be like competing for P2, maybe. I don't know. I could be wrong about that, but I think Piastri will improve, and I think P9 is a solid spot for him. P8, I put Fernando Alonso. Last year, I actually ranked him higher, and Aston Martin got off to an even better start than I even imagined, but I think they've taken a bit of a step back this year, or at least the development hasn't done as much as other teams have, for example. So I think P8 will be very respectable position for him. Fernando, he will definitely get a podium here and there, at least like a P3. But they just don't have it. They won't be regularly in the top 4. I think P8's a very respectable spot for Alonso. P7, I've put George Russell. I think Mercedes will probably be about the 3rd best team. The only reason I've put him P7, noticeably probably Norris is still above him at this point, is simply because Mercedes will have to prioritize one driver or the other in each and every race. I don't think McLaren will have that decision, so that's why I've got Russell here, and I've got Lando Norris in P6. For exactly the reasons I was just saying. I think Norris is a fantastic driver. I think he might be a top 3 driver on the grid potentially, but I think he just gets that like strategic advantage position with McLaren that I think that he'll edge out Russell, and he'll definitely get a big advantage over Piastri. P5, I've put Lewis Hamilton. I think they are probably the 3rd best car on the grid this year, so obviously the top 4 spots are reserved for those 2 teams. I think he's going to do fantastic, have himself a pretty decent finishing year with Mercedes. I won't be shocked if he gets himself a lot of podiums. I won't be shocked if he gets himself a win. He is still a fantastic driver, and I'm looking forward to his final season, but I'm also looking forward to seeing him in red. In P4, I've put Carlos Sainz. I think him and Charles could probably swap each other around, which kind of gives away the rest of the order, but I think Carlos might be one of, if not the most consistent driver on the grid. I just think he doesn't have that extra edge in him, where in a competitive close field, I think Carlos takes the edge. I think if Ferrari have a car that separates themselves, gets themselves into a definitive P2 spot, I think Charles gets that edge because he gets that extra little bit of breathing space. I think when Charles has that breathing room, that open air around him, he's better, but I think Carlos might be a better wheel-to-wheel driver. That's how I kind of think of it, in my opinion. So, with that being said, I put Charles in P3 for the reasons I just said. When there's qualifying and open air and sessions like that, I think Charles is going to solidify himself into a solid P3, because I think the top 2 drivers in the Red Bull car are going to kind of run away with it. So, obviously, I'm putting Sergio Perez P2. There's not a chance I'm having him beat Max. I'm kind of surprised Sergio kept his job for this year, which is crazy considering he finished P2 in the standings, but he was just awful. There's no hiding it whatsoever. He needed to improve. This is 100% his seat to lose this year. 100%. I won't be surprised if it goes to someone like Sainz. I don't think Alonso's in the battle, but I can definitely see like Ricardo or Tsunoda getting consideration. 1,000%. And obviously that leaves Max Verstappen winning his 4th championship in a row, which is insane. He will tie Sebastian Vettel for championships and definitively become the #1 driver in Red Bull's books, like officially probably. At least that's how they'll be wording it. Like, as much as it'll be tying Sebastian Vettel, they're definitely going to be thinking of it as him beating him, because I think he has more wins for the team than Sebastian ever got. So yeah, in their minds, Max Verstappen is now the guy. And yeah, that kind of wraps up the driver's order. Let's take a look at the teams. I think it's pretty obvious looking at this order, but I put Red Bull in P1, Ferrari in P2, Mercedes in P3, McLaren P4, Aston Martin P5, Alpine P6, Racing Bulls, whatever you're calling them, P7, Sauber P8, Williams P9, and then Haas all the way at the bottom. I don't think that would really shock anyone, this order. This kind of seems about fair, but I definitely want to hear other people's opinions. Who would you put higher? Who would you put lower? Am I completely way off base with anyone? Give me crap about my pronunciation, how tired I look. I don't really care, but at the same time, I would appreciate if you leave a comment, leave a like, or give me a follow on any of the social medias that are right down here. I especially would love if people would come and tune in whenever I'm streaming on Twitch. We play a lot of F1 Manager, management games in general, like some NHL, a little bit of Football Manager. I want to get into it more frequently, but yeah, let's hang out and Thank you very much for watching. I hope you all have a good night. Take care. Nope.